What is the cultural game? Why does it come about? And why does it exist? In order to understand the origin of the cultural game, we have to understand the basis for culture. The entire basis for culture is the fulfillment of the human need for certainty. And it works like this. A group of people. Why a group of people? Well, a group of people always survives better as a group than as an individual. Why? Well, because there are certain things that a group and that individuals will encounter that can only be responded to by a group. And if you think of those types of things, physical things in your life, there's an earthquake and a concrete pillar falls down and it's trapping an individual. That individual will never get out alone. The concrete pillar only weighs 600 pounds, right? But laying flat on their back, an individual cannot get out from under a 600-pound pillar. They're never going to do it. But you see, 5 people can lift them out in 5 minutes. So certain death becomes probable success if your network is 5 people. And the bigger the network, the more likely it is that cooperating together, you can overcome the tragedy. You can overcome the problem. So that's why the group. Now, a group presents a series of problems, right? Because if there's too much individuality, if you speak Japanese and someone else speaks Chinese and someone else speaks English, and if everyone speaks their own language, the network effect is lost, right? And so we have to agree that we're all going to speak this language. Because even if it's not a very good language, even if Japanese does a much better job of emphasizing this element, this texture within reality, right? But we're not going to learn Japanese because it's a smaller network than English, right? English doesn't do a good job of emphasizing this. The Danish do a good job of emphasizing home and hearth and quality of living. But there's not that many people know Danish. So the network is an important principle in survival. And we're all going to agree that this is the way things are done in this culture. And that's why every culture has as its root word cult. The cult of unthinking conformity. We learn English because we learn English, and that's why we learn English, right? There's no more thought than that. I mean, most people don't even ask the question. That's how you know you're in a cult. The purpose of a cult is to overcome overwhelm to such an extent that you can function cohesively as one, as a group, right? And in order to function cohesively as a group, you need a certain amount of conformity. That's the service that a group provides, is belonging to a larger network, and conformity. And the conformity creates flow, right? The fact that, a USB-A port is kind of a crappy port. You have to flip it. But a USB-B port, you have to get the top up and down. You're always putting, a USB cable, you got a port, and you put it in, it's like the wrong way, and you have to flip it. So a USB-C port is better. You know why? So no matter which way you put it in, it works. There's just one problem, right? Someone came up with a USB-C port long ago when everyone was using USB-A and USB-B, right? It's just if you're the only one with a device that has USB-C and all the ports are USB-A and B, it doesn't matter that your approach is better. It doesn't matter that your approach is 10 times better. You've got nowhere to plug in your gadget. Right? You have to wait until the leaders of a cult, in this case Apple or Google, you have to wait until the leaders get around to improving the cult protocol before your 10 times better idea has any value. Because if you're the only one who invented a new language that no one else understands and can connect with, it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter how much better your technology is. What matters is no one can connect, right? So there is a tension between the network of the majority that's stupid and the innovation and the brilliance of the minority that has no home, that's disconnected from the rest of the group. There's a tension between that because the greatest technology, the best ideas, the most luminous intelligence is in a minority of people. But the greatest flow, the biggest network, is in the majority of people. So at any given point, right, if you follow the most intelligent people, they will lead you out of your cult. The most intelligent people will say, what are you doing at university? It's gotten more expensive and you're learning things that are less relevant and you're less secure in a job based on a degree. What are you doing at university? An intelligent person will tell you. Right? But has the cult caught up, right? Will other people understand? I'm really smart, and so I chose to create a university of life and look at the results, right? Because if the majority lacks the competence to evaluate your innovation, the only thing they may see is these people all have degrees and you don't. Now, you could say that's very stupid. They can't tell the difference without a piece of paper on who's smart? No, they can't. So at what point do you become stupid for being smart? Right? Because you're smart enough to leave university, but you're not smart enough to help cult members recognize your gifts without the certificate, right? So there is an innate split between the majority and the minority. The latest technology, the most luminous brilliance, the greatest concentration of wealth, the best ideas, the brightest talent, the best thinking, the best art, the best food is all curated by less than 1% of the population. It's that simple. 1% of the population has 10 times more of whatever it is that you value than the average. 10 times more money, 10 times better math skills, 10 times better culinary skills, is a 10 times better surgeon. 1% of the surgeons is 10 times better than the average surgeon, right? So this is a Pareto principle. It's the 80-20 principle is a dumbed-down version. A minority of people have a 10 times better technology, a better pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being than the average. But they don't have a network, right? They don't accept health insurance because the health insurance company is too dumb to grasp that they get more bang for the buck doing this surgical technique than the old way of doing things. So there's a split between the old and the new. And the new is held by less than 1%. And the old is held by, let's say, 90%. Because there's also a stupid minority. There's a minority that it hasn't come up with a 10-time better way of producing anesthesia. It doesn't believe in doctors, and so lets people die, right? So you also have a distinct minority that's stupid, and this is why it's so difficult to leave the herd, right? Because if you're in the herd and you've got two minorities, well, you've actually got thousands of minorities, but you've got a bunch of minorities and you're in the herd. Well, if you're in the herd, you can guarantee that you're doing things 10 times less intelligently than they could be done. Guaranteed. If you're doing what everyone else is doing, you can be absolutely certain that you are dumb relative to how things could be done and are being done by a very, very tiny group of people in a very, in a very small portion of the planet. Right? There's a small portion of people that are stopping people from going to prison in the first place for less than $1,000. And that's 10 times more intelligent than instigating them on the path towards prison and then taking public money by force and then splitting up families and locking people up and paying $100,000 a year in tax money. And then putting them back on the street with less life skills and a higher chance of being re-imprisoned than before they went in, right? It's pretty dumb. And it's normal, right? So normal is stupid, but it's not very stupid, right? Normal is often better than nothing. It's questionable, right? It is questionable. right? If after going to prison, you're more likely to commit more crime than when you went in, it is questionable. Maybe if we just liquefied the entire prison population and prisons and put that money towards something else, cultural design, perhaps, the world would be a better place, right? Perhaps, right? When one of the leading causes of death is incompetence and accidents in hospitals, right? People with minor injuries go into a hospital and come out dead, or with a minor infection come out with an amputation because of the malpractice, because of the incompetence of hospital staff. You know, there is a good case to say, well, of all the trillions of dollars being spent in healthcare, if it's pretty close, you know, on a statistical whole, that, yeah, we saved these lives, but we added these things, plus we made people poor, maybe just give all that money back to people and shut down the hospitals. Maybe, right? It depends, right? Because to filter out the area where medicine is doing far more benefit than harm, you'd have to be intelligent, right? And the population doesn't want to become that intelligent. It just, anytime I feel bad, I want to go to the doctor and just do whatever they say, right? And how many doctors are going to say, well, this is an area where we are so incompetent that if you do what we say, there's a 50-50 chance that you'll get worse and a 50-50 chance that we'll get better. And so we have really no legitimate right to take your money. How many doctors want to say that when that means a redundancy, when that means doctors get laid off, right? So there is a crisis between the mediocrity of the majority, of the 80%, and just for simple things to kind of fit into the mediocrity of the 80-20 principle, because it's not really 80-20, it's deeper than that, but it's known, right? We know that. It's become mediocre. But to fit into that, let's just say there's 10% left that is better than average, and 10% left that is worse than average. Well, if you're mediocre, it means you don't understand even why you're doing what you're doing. That's average. Why are you speaking English instead of Chinese? Well, never gave it a second thought. I just learned what was here. Why are you saving up and doing diversified stock portfolios rather than, you know, planting asparagus at $6.99 a pound organic, or whatever it is that a very small percentage of people is doing better than average, right? Well, I look around me, says the average person, I see what everyone else is doing, and I try to copy it. Works some of the time, it doesn't work some of the time, but that's about as much thought as I put into it. Now, how are you going to tell with that level of intelligence who's the 10% idiots and who are the 10% genius? How are you going to figure that out with such little thought? As I look around, I look at what the majority is doing, and I do the same thing, right? It's brilliant, isn't it? How are you going to figure that out? You'd have to get intelligent in order to figure out who the intelligent people are and who the idiots are that are different from the majority, because the only thing you can know for certain is that there is a group, let's say 10%, that are doing it better than average, and there's another 10% that are doing worse than average. If you just stay in the average, you don't have to figure those two out. But if you step outside the pool, you have to think, right? And if the average person isn't thinking, or is thinking poorly, you'd have to step out of average to start thinking and thinking intelligently before you could evaluate which of the 10% are doing better than average and which are doing less than average. But you have another equation that you have to figure out. You've figured out that these are the group that are having much better results than this group. Okay, good. But they're misfits. They always are, right? A cult's job is to ensure conformity to maintain the network, right? Because if the network becomes too fragmented, if some people do USB-A, some people do USB-C, some people do USB-D, hasn't been invented, right? But some people start doing that, right? A better approach. How about a power cable? You just throw it towards your device and it finds the power cord and connects to it, whatever it is, and figures out the voltage, right? That one isn't available yet. How about that, right? They've gone to wireless, right? But what if nobody is supporting that? And so only 1% of the population is using it, so the costs are really high. It's much better, but because scale has not reduced the cost, it's a 10 times better technology, but it costs 20 times more money. So it's not intelligent to use the better approach because it's too expensive. Right? What about that? You've got to be able to do that equation. You've not only got to be able to figure out who's doing the better way, but what are the full implications of doing it the better way? Is the cost 20 times more expensive, but it's a 10 times more successful operation? Well, if it's your health, right? If you're 10 times more likely to live, but the surgery is 30 times more expensive, can you afford it? That's an important analysis. And if you can, what about the other treatments out there? Maybe there's another treatment that's 10 times more effective, but it's only 5 times more expensive. You have to figure that out, right? You have to do 10 times more thinking in order to find the 10 times better approach that has the best value. Well, maybe you don't have time for 10 times more thinking and 10 times more research. Maybe you need to act now, right? And so you got to figure out that equation. Because if your leg needs amputating, you may not have 3 months to find the 10 times better approach that might allow you to keep your leg. Because if you wait a month, you may be dead as a whole body, and not just, so you just chop it off. Do it the normal way. So the cult's job is to create enough conformity that the network functions, right? The cult's job is to kill off people's creativity and ideas about a better USB port so that everyone's USB port is the same, right? The cult's job is to say, it doesn't matter that your Wi-Fi technology is 10 times better. Get out of here. We want the old crappy Wi-Fi that other devices can connect to. Because we don't all want to have to go out and buy new computers just because you've got 10 times better Wi-Fi. We can't afford that. It's too much confusion. Right? And we don't want half the cult not being able to have Wi-Fi with the other half, right? Because, so overall, we're going to reject your creativity, your initiative, your excellence, because it's going to distort the conformity of the group, of the cult. Right? And you've got to figure out, do you want to be thrown out of the cult because you've got better ideas? And right, and you've got to figure out the investor equation, right? If they're looking at a 4-quarter return, and they're not going to make any money with you for 10 years, and you haven't figured out that equation, then you go bankrupt because you had a better idea. Because you didn't have a better idea on how to present the better idea to investors. You couldn't show them efficiently that you were worth the 10-year wait. Right? Jeff Bezos did that with Amazon. He showed investors that Amazon was worth the 10-year wait and just kept losing money. Elon Musk showed investors that losing money in Tesla was worth it. Right? So he had a better idea, but he also had a better idea for presenting the better idea to investors, such that a 10-year idea could pay off. But you don't. And so your 10 idea goes bankrupt with a lot of angry friends and relatives who don't understand why it went bankrupt. They're just mad that your company didn't make money and their stock in Microsoft went up every quarter. Right? Right? That's the majority is too dumb to analyze their stupidity. Right? And so to expect the majority, to expect members of a cult to be able to analyze what you're doing that isn't part of the cult, because it's not done by any majority yet, is stupidity, right? So you've broken out of the cult in one area of excellence, so you're above average. But as a member of your cult, you haven't broken out of any numbers of other areas of stupidity. Because ultimately, it's not, is this a better idea? And are you more intelligent for being able to create the idea? It's, are you intelligent enough to help stupid people understand why your idea is better, right? So if you've got a great idea and you're too stupid to invent a way that stupid people can understand your idea, then it's stupid for you to pursue your idea, right? Because you're going to fail unless you help stupid people understand the brilliance of your idea. If you can't do that, then you're too stupid to afford to be brilliant. Because you're going to fail. And even if you hold on to your tiny, much better technology, then no one else is going to get it. And so the 10x improvement will be lost because your network is too small. The Facebook that is 10 times better than Facebook doesn't matter if only 2 people are on it, right? So this is a big challenge, right? It's one of the reasons why there will always be a small group of people that have a 10 times better way of doing things, and it will always take time. It's also one of the reasons why the best ideas rarely happen, right? The best phone isn't the iPhone. It hasn't been built yet. It's not a Samsung Note. It hasn't been built yet, right? Because often the people who are truly genius in a very tiny specialized area like phone development are so busy being a genius there that they haven't learned to have interactions with other human beings. The person that knows the psychology of ants better than any other person and could give the best lecture based on data than any other expert on ants does not give the leading expert on ants, does not give the leading lecture, because they haven't learned anything about salesmanship. They've learned all about ants, right? And so it is someone who's too stupid to be the best lecturer on ants who listens to the best lecturer on ants and is just intelligent enough to grasp their 40 years of data, who has spent all their time networking and looking good, that gives the leading expert lecture on ants, right? They're not smart enough to be the leader. They're smart enough to recognize the leader who can't give the lecture because they haven't played enough of the game, because they've been actually busy studying ants or studying wireless technology, right? As opposed to playing politics, right? So the cult is the game. The cult creates a set of rules based on the past that are dumbed down enough for the average person to be able to understand them. And basically says, you will get points, plus, for each of these rules you follow. It doesn't matter that universities are broken, expensive, and not leading to good jobs. Go to university anyways because we'll give you points for that. It doesn't matter that office workers are on the way out, right? Because we're reinventing mobile this and that and the other. Just study, become a secretary, right? Because we'll give you points for that too. And if you get enough points in the cult, you'll be promoted within the cult. You'll get rank within the cult. And it doesn't matter that you're not terribly effective, because cults are not based on effectiveness. A cult would disintegrate immediately if you actually measured talent, because you'd immediately discover that the most talented people have low rank in the cult and vice versa. You know, that some of the stupidest people are at the top of the cult because the cult has diverged from the underlying reality, right? So the cult is a simplified simulation of reality that's mediocre. But beneath that, you have the actual reality, right? So the cult map, circles are complicated. Millions, billions of dots or planes or distinctions, that's reality. It's too complicated. So cult takes all that stuff and divides it down into 3 categories, right? Or 2, right? Let's just work and life, right? This is work down here. This is life. Wonderful, right? Take something of infinite dimensions down to a level that anyone can grasp. And you just have to balance work and life, right? It's pretty dumb, right? It's crude, simple. It's very difficult, but people can get it, right? Whereas if you start saying, no, you have to balance the energetic dimension, and you have to, you have the energetic dimension, there's the creative dimension, there's chaos, there's order, to balance all these different polarities. And they're all necessary. You have to have some good, what you're calling good, and you have to have some evil, what you're calling evil. You have to have some dark and some light. And well, I just want to know what to do. Please tell me what to do. Well, that's what your cult members are for. And that's what cult leaders are for. A cult leader is either someone who's so sophisticated they know it's a game, or they're so dumb that they don't realize that what they're saying is nonsense. And so they truly believe that if you work hard and go to school and do whatever your parents say, they truly believe you'll be happy, right? Because they're too dumb to look at the data, right? So, a really dumb conformist makes a terrific cult leader because they believe it, and they just tune out all the data. They don't even notice it, right? Or someone who completely understands that it's a joke. They will be able to deal with understanding what people want. They want to hear what they've heard before because it's simple, because it's normal. They want to hear that this time we're going to do the same thing that we did before, but it's going to have different results. It's wonderful, isn't it? All of you people, if you elect me, we're going to do exactly what we did before. Only everything is going to turn out wonderfully. I'm going to say the same things you've been hearing for the last 50 years. We need a change. We need this. We need this. I'm going to say the same thing. I'm going to do the same things. I'm going to drive around in a bus waving at people saying absolutely nothing. And this time, it's all going to be different. What a wonderful thing to hear for an idiot, right? Or a cynic, right? It's not going to make any difference, right? It's wonderful, right? But to hear that, no, it's not going to be better. It's actually going to get worse before it gets better, and we're going to try new things, and you're all going to think more. You're going to work harder. Some of you are going to fail more. Some are going to come out winners. Some of you are going to come out losers. But in the next 20 years, we'll come out 300% ahead versus the downward trend that we're on and likely to continue on unless we deal with it. Nobody wants to hear that, right? So stupid people elect people who are stupid or are willing to lie. Now, the people who are stupid and willing to lie, who are elected by people who don't want to think, who want the security of conformity. Right? You don't want to hear that the reason you're suffering is because you elected the wrong person, or you wouldn't think, or you won't do things for yourself. So you have to silence truth tellers. Otherwise, it's upsetting. You have to kill off truth tellers. Then you've got these margins. And out on the margins, things work. Meaning there's a small percent, like 1% of the people have really, they really know how to do relationships. They really know how to be healthy. They really know how to run a good business. 1%. They know some stuff. But if you listen closely to what they know, and they're decent enough to explain things candidly, you have to undo all the things that's holding your network together in order to join the 1%. Right? When the majority are prepared for jobs, you have to be prepared to start a company. Right? When the majority are studying this, you have to study that. When the majority are learning this way, you have to learn that way. and the cult starts to change, and people get upset. Not because of suffering, failure, and mediocrity, they're used to that, but because things are changing. Things are going closer to the unknown. Now, at one point in the history of humanity, the cult dogma was a good thing, right? So the cycle kind of works like this. You have a new idea, and it is rejected. Everyone laughs at that. What a dumb thing. Don't do that. Do the normal approach, right? So Bill Gates and Steve Jobs drop out of college to start a computer company. What a dumb idea, right? So you can do a survey with 1,000 parents in the United States around this time and say, should I drop out of college and start a company? And 90% of the parents will all say that's a very dumb idea. We'll cut off your allowance if you drop out of college and start a company. We're not going to fund you, and you'll fail. You'll come crawling home, and it's a terrible idea. Terrible. Right? But, you see, this is the curve, but, right, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs succeed. They succeed. And they succeed 1,000 times more than the college graduates. And then the story gets told and other people copy, and some of those succeed, and we ignore the failure stories and we focus on the success stories. And so it becomes a new myth, a new legend. Well, once the majority understands it and has seen it on TV and read it in the newspaper, that's how you know the majority is thinking that way. Well, then dropping out of college and doing a startup is normal, right? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, but some other approach. I'm going to stay in college. Well, why don't you do something original, like copy what everyone else is doing and drop out and do this, right? So then it becomes the new thing. Then everyone wants to start a company and do this, you know, but of course they don't have the intelligence or the luck or the timing of Jobs and Gates, right? And so then, you know, most of them fail. And then eventually that myth loses some of its luster or something, and then there's something else, right? But it goes from being horrible to brilliant to just okay to horrible over time. It has a bell curve, any protocol. And by the time that the majority of people are doing it, whether it's going to college or doing startups or investing in .com, by the time that the majority of people are doing it, it's a bad idea relative to another better idea. But the cult's idea and agenda is to reward people for doing what the majority of people have been doing and are doing in order to maintain group cohesiveness. And that includes the majority has always punished its innovative minority. It's always ganged up on them to try and kill them for ruining the status quo, the peace of normalcy. We're all sitting here pretending that we know what we're doing the same thing we've always done, saying how wonderful we are, right? Because once upon a time that actually worked. Now we're just doing that happily. And some person comes along and says this is a 10 times better way of doing things. It's ruining the peace. So the cult has an immune system and tries to kill them. Emotionally, psychologically, mentally, financially. Right? Elon Musk is the biggest divergence from mediocrity on the business landscape in the United States. There's no bigger divergence from mediocrity towards innovation and excellence in the entire country than Elon Musk. And so they have to kill him, right? All the billionaires gang up. The single biggest shorted stock in the history of humanity, Tesla. Let's kill him. How dare he think differently? We've got to kill him. And let's all make money killing the good idea. Right? It's the crucifixion of Christ. The new technology, the new thought, let's kill him for diverging from the norm. Whatever it is, that's the job of the cult. Is when the children look up and say, maybe I should do that. No. Just do it the way it's always been done. Now, the way it's always been done never works in the future. It's guaranteed to fail. But it takes work, takes thought, and brings about anxiety and uncertainty to admit that things are changing, right? Even today, you have, like Toyota, the best manufacturer of reliable gas-guzzling cars, the best, is becoming the worst at producing electric cars. And so why is that? Why is it often that the best of the old fights the new the most? Well, part of it is the phenomena of local maximums. So let's say that I learn to struggle. And I struggle harder than anyone else, so I get to the top and I have all the rewards from struggling. But there is a certain point in growth where if you just keep struggling, you're going to die, right? Where it's becoming toxic. Now, you're the best struggler that's ever been. But now you're the worst at letting in miracles, at serendipity, right? So once you've maxed out what you can get from struggle, you've got to go down here into the valley of the unknown, into beginner's mindset again. And then you've got to climb on a new goal. Let's say it's law of attraction or something else, right? And then you get really, really good at that. I'm always attracting things. I'm doing things like this, right? But you reach the peak of that protocol where that can take you. Just nothing more you can do there. And the only way you can get better is to descend into chaos, into the unknown, and climb a new mountain, a taller mountain, with a higher probability field, a greater runway of possibility. But in between each of these things, you can't go from being the best struggler to the best surrenderer. No. You've got to unlearn all that struggle before you can be the best surrenderer. And you can't go from being the best surrenderer to the best struggler, right? And these things are cyclical, right? The wheel touches the ground at every point at one moment in time. And the way forward is not one thing, it's about the next step. The revolution, it's circular, but the way forward is after you've already maxed out the best you can do with struggle, then you can start exploring surrender, right? If you haven't maxed out what you can do with struggle, you're not ready for surrender, right? And perhaps vice versa, depending on the sequence, right? There's a circle. All energies are circular and they're connected, but they're a process, right? If you haven't learned fear, you're not ready to learn fearlessness, as an example, right? I have no fear. I just walk into moving traffic and I'm dead, right? You haven't learned fear. I've learned fear and I'm terrified. And I'm still alive. Okay, great. Now you're terrified of this, you're terrified of that. You understand all the problems in all these areas. I am a master of fear. I see that one coming a mile away. you have no idea how fearful I am, right? That could lead to that. Avoid that. I have climbed to the pinnacle of fear. But there's only so much success and well-being and abundance I can create out of more exquisite paranoid fear than anyone else. It's a local maximum, right? If you just keep getting more and more fear, your life gets bigger, there's more and more to be afraid of. You die from fear, right? So then you have to be able to transcend the fear, to go down into what? Trust, perhaps? I don't know how to trust. So you start at the bottom. I don't trust anything. I don't trust myself. I don't start at the bottom. I don't trust other people. I don't trust anything. I'm fearful. I don't know how to. So I'm now down at the bottom, right? So then I learn to trust, and I learn to trust, and I learn to delegate, and my company can get bigger, right? Can do this and this and this, right? And then you learn on the other side of fear how to trust, right? It's the step forward into polarity. It's a cycle, though, right? You have no fear. Don't lock the house, don't lock the safe, walk around with millions of dollars in a briefcase, tell everyone where it is. I have no fear. And you get destroyed. I totally have fear of every possible thing, and there's nothing else. I just can't get any more fearful without dying, right? And stress and anxiety, well, you get destroyed in that. So you have to go from one into the other. And it's leading you in a cycle of growth if you're sequencing them right. And you can get higher and higher and higher, right? And in order to grow, in order to be exceptional, you have to diverge from the herd. But before you can diverge from the herd, you have to secure partnership from the herd, right? If you don't get your parents to keep you alive until age 10, you're dead. It's that simple. You knew better all along. They were complete fools, admittedly. But you're dead, right? Without the breast, playing in the forest with your brilliant ideas, right? You're dead. So you need to belong before you can transcend. You need to understand the benefit of fear before you can become more fearless intelligently. You need to understand how to use USB-B or A in order to plug in the mouse and write the code for USB-C and USB-D. Right? If you want to invent Bitcoin, you need to buy a computer with cash, right? So you have this phenomena, and a cult leader climbs to the top of the cult leadership role. What do? They join the Rotary Club, they join the Boy Scouts, right? They wear a suit, right? They climb to the top of the local maximum of the cult, and they get rewarded for being the source of stability and safety. They are rewarded for being a cult leader, for doing things the way they've always been done, for showing an example of how it was done before, just done even better, right? Taking the old ideas. And they are rewarded for keeping things the same and not upsetting people. Well, meanwhile, the new generation is trying to go higher than it is possible to get doing things the old way. And the cult leader is rewarded for keeping that the same. Say, no, video games are bad, that's bad, sex is bad, sex out of homicide is bad, right? Just do things the way they've always been done, because that worked before, right? And in order then to grow to the next level, there has to be a rebellion. It has to go from sympathy to antipathy, the adolescent stage, the rebellion. And the job of the cult leaders, be it the parents, the teachers, whatever, is to kill Christ. Right? The Romans had a good system going. It's all about power. It's all this. And Christ is teaching it's about love thy neighbor. So the Romans are teaching go kill your neighbor and suppress them and take taxes from them. But Christ is saying, no, there's a better paradigm out there. So we got to kill him, right? Well, every generation is bringing new ideas that are medicinal to the toxicity of the old ideas that worked before but don't work anymore, that aren't the best approach. And it's the job of the cult leaders, parents, governments, teachers, to kill them. That's a bad idea. We're going to ground you. We're going to take away your allowance. We're going to kick you out of the house. Refuse to pay anything. You're no son of mine. Right? All the threats because you're doing it differently. Unless you cut your hair, unless you stop taking LSD, unless you give up that guitar, unless you do this, unless you study banking and stop looking at ridiculous poetry or we are going to kill you for your own good, because you don't want to go back to the starvation, the plague of 1574, right? All the horror stories, and God's going to punish you out of love. He will burn you alive because you didn't do what you were told. So the cult, maintaining conformity, rewarded for conformity, is going to try and kill you. Kill anything decent in you, anything excellent, anything original. Going to kill it. Send out the executioner. Nail them to the cross. Show an example. See? They tried to start a band. They smoked marijuana. And now look at them on the cross, publicly humiliated. That's what will happen to you, right? Why? Because we're going to catch you and use superior mass and crucify you for being different. Why do you have to do that? Because it's the way things are done. If you want to be part of the cult, you have to be cult-like. But I don't want to be part of the cult. Well, I don't want to have to do it. It's going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. Doubtful. But we're going to crucify you. Right? Comes awfully funny, right? When it's the church doing it, right? We're going to cast you into hell. We're going to curse you. We're going to tell our members how evil you are. You're doing things differently, right? Men are supposed to fight other men in the name of the Lord. They're not supposed to love each other. So you're loving each other. It's not what we do around here, right? I'm going to kill you. Throw you out. Blame it on God, right? God's going to cast you into a lake of fire, right? You brought pleasure to another human being, right? That'll teach you. So you have the fear of change, right? Which is the fear of the unknown, which includes all possible horror, right? The unknown is very big. All possible bliss, all possible horror, it's all there in the unknown. So we're going to punish you for having the audacity to make us nervous, for stepping out, doing things differently. Now, of course, you have another problem, right? It's often humiliated, abused people who flip, right? If you look at dictators, for example, they almost always had tremendous abusive fathers that were dictators, right, to them, right? And so you have this dynamic where, often people who are the most driven to succeed, I'm going to just be better than everyone else. Often they were bullied or, humiliated when they were weak, right? So they've gone from their absolute worst nightmare of being dictated to, of having no choice, of being unfairly treated, of being humiliated, of being poor and looked down on. And they've decided at 5 or 10 years old, I'm never going to have that happen again. I'm going to do whatever it takes. So they're very motivated through the misery and trauma of childhood and adolescence. They're incredibly motivated to flip that dynamic from being the underdog to being the top dog, which always means climbing the cult ladder, right? You've been laughed at, your father was a painter and you couldn't pay your rent and da-da-da-da-da. I'm not going to, fuck dad, a painter. Ugh. I'm going to be a banker. No one's going to laugh at me and my children. So they flip, right? They go strong, right? We didn't have anything. Well, we're going to have it all, right? Well, the easiest path to reliably having it all is to climb the cult, to check off the boxes. You're a banker, you're a college graduate, you're heterosexual, you're white, you're normal, you're a hard worker, right? You check off the boxes, you wear uncomfortable clothes, you eat the things, you never say anything that the cult doesn't say. You're a very good cult member, and so you climb the cult ladder. And then as you climb the cult ladder, you get praised. Children, you want to be like so-and-so that's climbed the cult ladder, right? So you've gotten your medicine, right? You've gone from being humiliated and down at the bottom to up at the top. And the last thing you want to do is lose the top focus. You don't want to lose that leadership position, right? Usually, and it's been shown, the best leaders don't want to be leaders because they know it's a martyr's game. And the worst leaders want to be leaders desperately because it's medicine for whatever is. I mean, what intelligent person would sign up to try and look perfect for a majority of uneducated fools who are going to blame you for everything that goes wrong and feel entitled to everything that goes well? No sane person wants that job. You work 18-hour days, and then everyone holds you to a standard that they don't apply to. You had an affair. Hello? You had 3 affairs? No, but that doesn't count. You're the president. Right? You embezzled money. Hello? You reported 10,800 miles on your IRS tax for your work vehicle. You only drove 500. Right? You cheated on the cost of your house so you could avoid paying permits. You threw litter out the... What do you mean? I have to be 10 times more perfect than you. But you're the president. What do you mean? I have to live 10 times better than everyone else because I have an 18-hour job for a crappy salary? It's nuts. Who wants that? Right? Someone who's desperate to be on top. Not a highly competent, intelligent leader. A highly competent and intelligent leader would say, hey guys, if you want me to work for you, we're going to change the rules here. You're going to pay me a higher salary. You're going to let me get some sleep. We're not going to do reporting crap with this and this, and I'm going to tell you the truth. Hey, you're all sitting around watching TV. Cut it out. This isn't true. This isn't true. This isn't true. The people that gave me money to my campaign, they're bribing me to change these bills, right? And everyone will be upset, be furious. No one will donate any money to the campaign. Everyone will be upset. You're making them think, right? So the person that climbs up the top of the ladder, whether it's the principal, you see, the principal didn't become principal of the school because they pointed out the stupidity of the national school system. Those teachers got fired or left in rudimentary positions and told to shut up, right? person that got elected to be principal praised how brilliant the national principal or the head of education was, and didn't point out the flaws, and made things easier and hushed up scandals. That's who got elected to be principal, just like at the Vatican, right? You don't get to be top in the Vatican for pointing out that 5% of the priests are pedophiles. No. If you want to get really high in the Vatican, you've got to become good at covering stuff up. You've got to develop new legal structures for non-disclosure agreements for all the parents of abused children. Right there in front of you. Right? So you don't get intelligence at the top of a system. You get conformity to the system. Now, the very thing that makes you brilliant at the system, wearing the suit, doing what everyone else is doing, copying the last few generations, being a banker, being an attorney, the very thing that gets you to the top of the system makes you terrible for designing a new system. Which means that you've only got one way. If you want to evolve and you're at the top of the power structure, if you're the president and you want to grow, you've got to give up all that you're great at and start at the bottom where you're probably worse than average, right? Your teenager knows more than you do. I'm the world expert in IBM mainframes. Yeah, and your teenager knows the future more than you do, right? That's on the phone. Well, I don't want to know less than my teenager. I want to be better than everyone else. Well, then you got to stay in the old technology. Well, what do you do when new technology starts to compete with you? Well, you have to kill it. Because otherwise you're all those parents saying, look at so-and-so. They're not going to say that anymore if you're at the bottom, right? And I don't want to be at the bottom. I want to be up at the top, right? So the leaders of the cult kill off and attack the future of the cult, the new way, because they don't have rank in the new way. They've got rank in the old way. And so the new way falters or has to be smart enough to outsmart the guns of the old way that are out trying to kill them all the time, right? The United States wouldn't exist if U.S. citizens had not outsmarted the British. America is the new way. They wanted monarchies, not democracies. So the U.S. had to outlive and outsmart the British. Otherwise, they're trapped forever in the old way of doing things. Just the way it is. Right? And there's always a new way, right? But to get to the new way, you have to start at being terrible. You have to start at ground zero. This is why the fool in the tarot world is such a significant archetype. Because when you go from being a master of the old to a novice, an innocent, a naive fool in the new, you are making the biggest pivot in evolution that it is possible to make. You're changing the paradigm. You're going from a local maximum that has been peaked, right? You've climbed the mountain. There's no more climbing. That's the end of that mountain. And you've got to start down here, which means you've got to come all the way down. And you've got to start climbing the next mountain. And you're a fool. You start as a child. The single biggest pivot in evolution is going from here down to here in a local maximum. And only a fool would do that. Only a fool, right? The cult represents the things that worked in the past that everyone's agreed to conform to. The next level of evolution is up here in the unknown, in a new mountain that only a few have begun climbing. Reality will reward you for growing, for evolving, and will kill you for stagnation and living in the past. But your cult will kill you for changing and evolving, and will reward you for conformity and living in the past. And so the crisis and the game is, first of all, you have to have enough of a cult mask to not appear like enough of a threat to be gunned down, to be crucified. But if you buy into the delusion of your cult performance, of your mask, you cannot help evolution. You cannot lead your people. You cannot fully succeed. You cannot grow. That requires divergence from the cult, which is the basis of all evolution. In every 1,000 dandelion seeds, there's 1% of the dandelion seeds that are better because they're different than all the other dandelion seeds. And there's 1% of the dandelion seeds that are worse. And the reason dandelions will be around in 1 billion years is if that keeps happening. If there are enough misfits among the clones to lead the dandelion to adjust again and again and again to the soil it encounters, which is always changing, because life is always changing. The misfits, the deviant, the deviation, the loner, the oddball in nature, 1% of those are leading life towards greater and greater, more and more intelligent forms of life. The majority is holding space, maintaining the status quo. 1% are leading the future, and another percent is dying off. Everything, life's protocol from the beginning of the Big Bang, is to diversify, clone, and deviate from the clone in all directions to find what works better. Not to risk everything, but to risk something on what works better. And in 1,000 years, that becomes the norm. That deviation, that small minority in 1,000 years that grew better, had a deeper root, had a higher heat tolerance. That one becomes the new herd, the new dominant species. And the others die off. If the dandelion can't keep that up and all the other plants keep iterating and growing, soon there's no place for a dandelion. There's no place for a human being. The 1% that is constantly being crucified by the cult is the path that allows the species to continue. If killed, there is no future for the species. Only all the other patterns of energy that keep iterating and keep changing. What life rewards you for will be punished by the cult. What the cult rewards you for will be punished by life. The game, therefore, is to borrow and have enough of the cult's disguise to be allowed within the system, while iterating, while leaning into the new, while listening to the underlying ecology that doesn't lie, while making the changes to conserve energy and deliver more sustainable well-being that lead the way for both the cult and the human beings in that cult to grow, to exist 1 billion years from now in a new and more intelligent form.